Today, I want to show you three things: the 3D printing opportunity, the value of 3D printing, and key business models that you can use to get involved and make money with 3D printing. Let's jump into it. 3D printing isn't just about making things, it's about making new possibilities. So doing different things in a different way. I should know, I've invented a glass 3D printing technology. I've got a business called Ari and Arlo, and we 3D print products and sell them. That's an e-commerce setting, as well as designing parts and printing them on demand services or consulting. Myself and the team here at 3D Printing Gear have grown businesses using many different business models. I've seen firsthand how 3D printing is changing the world, and the finances reflect this, okay? The industry is rapidly growing. It's set to multiply by about 4 in the next 5 to 6 years. It will be worth over $100 billion. So I don't want to just sell you the dream, like, oh my God, everyone can make $1 billion with 3D printing. Okay, there's definitely a wave coming. It's already here. It's not easy to catch. Okay, it's something that you do have to learn quite a lot of skills, but there is a big opportunity because the industry is rapidly growing so much. So my goal is to help you realize this opportunity, learn the key skills, technical and business, to apply 3D printing and achieve your goals. Now, I want to talk about the value of 3D printing. Why does 3D printing provide so much value compared to other technologies? Well, firstly, it's really accessible. In terms of cost, machines can be as cheap as a few $100s. The size is also going way down, so you can get really efficient machines that can just sit right on your desk, and you can have a fleet of these in your garage or a spare room. And what people are doing now is even renting warehouses and filling them out to have full production capabilities. Flexibility in what you produce through design is a huge benefit to 3D printing. You're building the part layer by layer, of course, and therefore you can just do things differently. You can make different types of parts this way. This allows you to rapidly change and improve or customize what you're making. And lastly, there's a massive range of materials, from plastics, metals, composites. The list is forever growing. I've even seen some biological 3D printing, which is really, really cool. So if I had to summarize the workflow of 3D printing and how it helps you achieve highly valuable parts, I would break it up into 5 key steps. First, you have an idea, then you can design it in 3D, print and assemble that part, so you actually put it to the test, which is number 4, and then you repeat that process. And the tighter this loop is, the quicker that you can do this, the better your product will be. Being able to do this means you can improve whatever it is you're making very, very quickly. If you were making something before 3D printing, you'd be interrupted and slowed down at many of these points. For example, if I wanted something injection molded or routed with a CNC machine, then I would have to send the design off typically and then wait for that part to come back. And that could take a week or 2. And if I'm injection molding a completely new part, that could even take months. So it's very, very valuable when using 3D printing in a lot of setups, just to reduce that waiting time. And you can quickly test and more cheaply test things and get to your solution faster. All in all, 3D printing means that you have more possibilities in design. You can test and make changes much, much quicker, which ultimately means you can create something very high value. Whatever it is you're looking at creating, you can create something of really high value because you can repeat and improve that process over and over again very, very efficiently. All right, next, what are the key business models and ways people use 3D printing? So I'm going to break it down into different categories here. First, you can supplement what you're already doing. Now, this is probably the way that most people get started. They've got something that they're already doing and they're like, oh, hey, I can just like 3D print this part of it, or 3D print something to help me do it. That is like the start. And then there's like a whole sea of things that you could do after that. So first, if you want to get involved with 3D printing, just start by supplementing what you're doing. Product-based business models. So I'm going to make a product that solves a particular problem, and then I'm going to go sell that to customers. That is the most obvious one, of course. You know, people think of businesses and I think I'm going to sell a good, but we can also sell services, which is where we go into design-based business models. So we could design parts for people that don't have design skills. We could even sell those designs, and then we could even take it one step further, and if someone wanted a design made and they wanted that manufactured, we could then make it for them. So that's when we would start to offer things like a print service and supportive services. So think of things like maintenance, or when a school or a business wants to set up a 3D printing lab and workflows, then we could actually help them with those. We could look at upgrading the machines themselves and actually making new tools. So I made a glass 3D printing technology. There's a new type of 3D printer. You could make supporting pieces for existing 3D printers, or make your own entirely. if part of your job was to solve problems for clients, then 3D printing could be a huge benefit to you. If you need to produce physical parts, maybe it's prototyping, maybe it's end-use parts, 3D printing can do both. And we could also provide the machines themselves and the filament and all the consumables that go with it. We could sell those and enable that part of the industry. There's a whole ton of ways that you could get involved with 3D printing, of course. Another way, of course, to use your 3D printing skills is in the education and training industries. These are absolutely massive. Obviously, if you're teaching 3D printing skills to individuals, you could do that in schools. I taught at a university level, along with an array of design and kind of prototyping and robotic skills. And we really promoted project-based learning, which was really rewarding to see a lot of students like use 3D printing and design to come up with solutions to particular problems. Then you could look at cross-curricular integration. So you could try and use 3D printing to help students understand mathematics, for example, and like find projects and activities that they could, basically learn 3D printing and design, but also learn other parts of the curriculum. Next, what I love to see is when the students take over a little bit and they kind of own their work and their project. They kind of can steer the direction a bit more. So having like looser structures that allow people to really dive into wherever their passions are. All in all, when you're teaching 3D printing, you're teaching a way of thinking or problem solving. So when you have issues, we come and we look at, okay, we have an idea, how do we solve it? We'll come up with a concept for a solution, then we would look at a design for it, then we would print it, then we would test it. And if that doesn't work, then we might repeat that process, come up with a new idea, and then we go through that again. So going through that process of finding problems and solving them, that is the power of education with 3D printing. It really does allow people to be able to problem solve to a really high level. So a lot of people are just trying to create and sell products. That's awesome. It is one way that you can use 3D printing to make money. It's the most popular, of course. It's the front of mind, because it's the easiest to understand. I make something and I sell it. But as I described, there's a ton of ways of using 3D printing. Just have to think a bit more outside the box, think a bit more creatively. But if you have a product-based business in mind, and I do myself, like I've mentioned, there is a lot you need to learn and do. So I would recommend starting by tinkering and just learning the gear, the materials, the workflows. And then I would start to kind of dabble with small launches and product testings to see what your family and friends think, see what your immediate community thinks. And then once you gain some traction, this is important, you do need to have some traction, then you can start to systemize this and looking at your workflows. So having templates for your slicing, having a packaging station, having like really set ways that you buy material and your stock or any other bits and pieces that you actually need to assemble your product. And then number 4 is I would be expanding, and you're looking at like, how can I make sure that I have a really efficient workflow with my printers, and should I niche down and start selling to a specific audience, or should I stay more general? I would always suggest to niche down and focus on creating a highly valuable offer to a niche down audience. Then there's also branding and marketing. How do we actually create awareness and build a presence? We want to sell value, not just items. So how do we position our products? We have to look at finances and calculate and understand returns and profit. We're not just looking at revenue here. And then also acquisition. So once you grow big enough, you have to think about hiring. How do you get the right people? What skills do you actually need? What help do you actually need to grow your business? How do you set expectations for them? Do you have standard operating procedures that you provide to them so everyone's on the same page and we can push this thing in the right direction? Or is everyone doing something slightly different? So there's a lot you need to learn. And a lot of these 3D printing companies, they'll make a machine, say, look at all these amazing things you can do, but obviously it's difficult to actually go and apply that to a business, and actually to apply that, say, in an education setting. Like, those are completely different skills. Like, yes, like you're sold on the dream that you can make anything, and that's fantastic, but the actual application and all the other things around the actual process of printing, those are the things that we need to learn and get clear on. So 3D printing isn't just a tool, it's a mindset, but we do have to learn a lot more if we want to implement it in the right ways. So the additive approach, and this is something that I believe is when you have that mindset that you can make anything if you're willing to spend the time and the money and to get the right expertise to actually make that happen. I want to help you develop the foundational skills, the technical skills, and also the business skills so you can apply 3D printing, not just have this awesome piece of technology, but to utilize it to its fullest extent. Thank you, and I look forward to watching you print the future.